Hi, everyone. Hopefully this is working. We'll see about that. But all right. For those of you who are tuning in, my name is Alex Jacobs, and I'm a product manager here in the Louisville area. Welcome to the very first, I guess it's the inaugural ProductTank meetup for Louisville. Yeah, excited to get this going. It's been a long time coming. Lots of people have been helping to get this together, and so I'm excited to start kind of meeting more people through this and helping bring more resources and voices to the Louisville product community. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with ProductTank, I've got a little presentation that I've prepared. And forgive us, this is sort of the first time we're really using this technology and tool. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so I'll just share my screen. All right. So like I said, welcome to ProductTank. We'll learn a little bit more about what it is here in the next few slides. But effectively, what we're talking about is just a gigantic global product community. So it's not necessarily just limited to any one area, region, country. It's all across the globe, as you can tell by this map and the pins all over it. So it started out in Europe, but it's really obviously grown across the world, and specifically even it's exciting to kind of see it's growing, especially in the Asian Pacific Islander region as well. The ProductTank logo and brand is probably familiar to some, but not to others, and maybe Mind the Product is more so. But the ProductTank community is really a part of the Mind the Product parent organization, and really it's just sort of a mix of needs that are being met within product management, product design, product development across the board. So it's a network of local communities in 200 plus cities around the world, and that's all facilitated by the Mind the Product org, which is a global professional network for product people. But even beyond that, it's a global professional development network even and beyond. And whether it's ProductTank or Mind the Product, really the goal behind both is just to make product people more successful by coming together to further our craft and even have some fun, getting to meet each other and making some connections along the way. If you're interested and to know more about how you can get involved in this community as we kind of get growing and are launching this little community startup, there's a few different ways you can get involved. You can reach out directly to me or through our Twitter feed or the Mind the Product page, mindtheproduct.com, and you can let us know about if you want to speak at a ProductTank, if you want to host or even sponsor a ProductTank, either in your office once we're allowed to do those things again, or sponsor it in some way through just kind of getting your shout out there and helping people know that you are wanting to support and get involved. You can also write for mindtheproduct.com. It's sort of a newer thing. So for those of you who have been itching to write a book but aren't quite there yet with a publisher, you can always distill some into some smaller forms and get some practice by putting it out there on the Mind the Product website. And another big option is you can even become a Mind the Product member for a lot more of the content, some AMAs with people like Marty Kagan and Gibson Biddle and folks like that, and to become even more integrated into that global network of product people. So that's again at mindtheproduct.com/join. There's a few other resources you can find there. So that's the gist of Mind the Product. Really, I think what most people have come here tonight as well is to not just hear more about ProductTank and Mind the Product, but to start hearing from one of our guest speakers. So tonight we're going to get to hear from Becki Hyde, who's a Louisville native, even a homegrown product person. She's currently a product manager with VMware Tanzu Labs, formerly Pivotal Labs, and she'll be talking to us a little bit about how we can make magic with balanced teams. So without too much further ado, I'll go ahead and bring Becki on. And maybe, Becki, if you wouldn't mind just kind of going ahead and taking a moment to introduce yourself and kind of give us some frameworks from around, some frame of reference from where this has come from, and then we can jump right in.
Yeah, hi, I'm Becki. Like Alex said, born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I am a consultant with VMware Tanzu Labs, and I am a senior product manager and leadership advisor. And I work with enterprise, corporations, and the federal government, very large organizations, to scale modern agile software development methods within their technology teams. And I'm very passionate about the idea of balanced team and cross-disciplinary collaboration, hence my topic for the evening. So
awesome. Yeah, thanks, Becki. I'm really excited and looking forward to this one. Like I said, folks, we are still kind of like figuring things out. So hopefully you'll can bear with us as we get things going. So Becki, if you want to start sharing your screen, I'll go ahead and put that up, and we can let folks start to enjoy it. But just as she's getting that ready, just a quick reminder to people who are tuning in, if you're on YouTube, or I think that's probably the primary place we are, feel free to put your comments in there if you have any questions, or if something particularly resonates with you. You can add that to the chat. And if we have some time at the end, we will do our best to get through those questions and see what Becki's wealth of knowledge has to say about them. So, all right, we'll get started.
All right. So I did a bit of intro already, but just to go a little deeper, I started out my career as a designer. I have a degree in graphic design, and then I moved into product management around 2014. And I've sort of been really passionate about both and how those two roles work together, which led me to begin giving talks about balanced teams. I've worked in healthcare. I've been in consulting off and on. I've worked for startups. So I like to think that I have some pretty diverse and varied experience at this point, which I will tell you a little bit about here in a minute. So just to sort of set the stage here, I'm going to start out by framing up a problem that we as people working in technology experience. And then I'm going to tell you 3 stories about ways that teams that I have worked with have solved that problem. And then I'll actually at the end talk about the balanced team framework. But I want to start with kind of the interesting stuff before we get into the framework. So we have some problems. As software practitioners, we work in a rapidly changing world. No matter what industry our business is in, we are in the software industry. Most of us here, whether we're in insurance, finance, manufacturing, retail, or something else entirely, we share the challenges of people who build software. So before I get to the solution, let's spend a little bit of time admiring our problems so we can understand the scope. I promise not to linger here for too long. So building software is often described in 3 main facets or problems for us to solve. Viability, desirability, and feasibility. So what do those mean? Viability means, is the thing that we're building viable? Will it increase revenue or decrease cost for our business? Desirability is about our users and our customers, which are not always the same people, but the people who are going to use or buy the thing that we're building. Do they find value in it? Will they use it? Will they buy it? And last but not least, feasibility. So is it possible to build this thing that we want to build? And more importantly, is it reasonable for our company to build this thing? Or should we get this from a vendor? So in a world of software, yes, anything is theoretically possible with software in terms of can we build a product that supports a certain workflow? Sure. But feasibility is often more about, is this feasible for our business, our skill set, the team that we have, and the goals that we have? But those aren't the only problems that we're faced with, right? Those are the classic problems that we talk about all the time. There's also the problems that are emerging because of the world that we live in. Modern software development comes with a new set of risks compared to old school traditional waterfall software development. So we need to reduce risk. That means we are engaged in a very risky endeavor. There are so many unknowns that when we talk about our unknowns, we classify them as whether we know about them or not. If you've heard of people talking about unknown unknowns, there's just a lot of risk inherent in developing software. We need to go fast. So we need to deliver, and we need to do it quickly. Our customers, our users, and business partners, both internal and external, are not going to tolerate quarterly or yearly release cycles. So often we find ourselves scrambling to figure out how are we going to create something within the constraints of need and the pressure of needing to go really fast, so that we can build the best version of tomorrow. The pace of change is only accelerating, by the way. Tomorrow's products and services will be very different from what we create today, and we have to be able to meet that challenge head on and adjust to it, both for the success of the work we do and the success of our careers. So that leads me to, last but not least, developing skills. This is huge. Regardless of what company you work for, what challenges that company is facing when it comes to building software, we as people who work in software for a living have to stay relevant in a rapidly changing world. Leaders have to set their teams up for success. So if you look to Twitter, which has sort of become our industry's collective water cooler, you can see people asking a lot of questions about job boundaries and emerging skills. So if you're on design Twitter, like I find myself often, you hear people saying, should designers code? And then there's a big argument. More generally, you hear people saying things like, should I specialize in a certain skill or try to be a generalist? In our local Slack tech channel, every so often someone will pop in and say, like, what programming language should I learn to be marketable in the Louisville market? And it's like, well, it depends. It depends on what company, and the answer to that question changes pretty rapidly. So staying current on your skills is something that, like, we have to be continually learning, right? Much of the tech that we work with today didn't even exist 10 years ago. So for those of us who thought that, like, a formal education, a college degree was all that we needed to prepare us for a specific career, it can come as a shock to find that the tools we use and the things we built when we were younger are now obsolete. So if the job that I do today may not exist tomorrow, and the job I do tomorrow does not exist today, how am I going to stay relevant? So those are some problems. It's a lot to deal with, yeah? So there's a lot of ambiguity, and we need to be able to act fast. So I'm going to share with you a few stories from my personal experience of teams that worked through these kinds of problems together. So first up, working across the design and engineering divide to create products people love. The need for designers and engineers to collaborate is greater than ever. Design and engineering are the roles that breathe life into a product concept. When these two roles work well together, quality, effective experiences are built. And when these two roles are out of sync, it can be painful to get anything shipped, let alone something that you feel proud of or that customers will find valuable. Because design and engineering work so closely together, their conversations about implementation details can often generate new ideas and really elegant solutions that maybe weren't in our first pass. So many years ago, I was working on my first truly agile team, and I had an experience that, while it seems really small, is one of the experiences that changed the way that I thought about software development. So one day, one of our engineers on our team was working solo. The team I was on usually did paired programming. So for an engineer to be working by himself was pretty rare. But somebody was out that day, so he was working solo. He asked if I would like to pair with him building out the interface of a new feature. So as a designer with very little experience with code, I was pretty nervous about that idea. I barely know my way around HTML and CSS, and this was a native iPhone app. And I don't know anything about programming iPhone apps. But he's a super nice guy, and he was really fun to work with. So I took a chance, and I sat down with him to try it out. We only worked together for a couple of hours, but he showed me the code, showed me around, and showed me which parts created various aspects of the layout. And toward the end of our pairing session, I was manipulating the values that adjusted the elements on the screen, and honestly, was feeling rather proud of myself. So here's the first key takeaway. Now, while the single pairing session didn't teach me everything I need to know about development, and it certainly doesn't make me a software engineer, each time I sit down with an engineer and look at the code, I deepen my understanding of how our product works. So as a designer, that knowledge informed my design decisions. So I knew what was easy versus what was difficult and what was downright impossible. So working closely together across these disciplines improved communication with my teammates. If you understand a bit about what the other person does, you can communicate with them more clearly and efficiently. And the cherry on top of all this is that the more you work together, the more you feel like a team and not just a step in a delivery machine. So it behooves us to sort of reach across the aisle, so to speak, and try to understand a little bit about what other people in other disciplines on our team are doing. What's their day-to-day like? So story number 2. This one is about building a mobile app beta for users that was going to work on Android and iOS with 4 developers in 3 months. So several years ago, when I had transitioned into being a product manager, I was product manager for a new product that was a mobile app for in-home care managers. This new product, we really needed to validate that it would solve the problem that we thought it would. We wanted to reduce documentation time and improve documentation quality. We had this hypothesis that giving these users an app so that they could document in their phone on the go would improve this problem. Because we had a really tight timeline and we didn't want to throw a bunch of money into this product until we knew it was going to solve the problem, we wanted to get something out fast. We traditionally did native development on Android and iOS, but we were in such a time crunch that we were like, I don't really know what platform to start with, and we can't really do both and go fast. So we did a survey of our users to see if there was a prevalence for one platform over the other, and it came out at a 49%, 51% split. So that didn't actually help us make a decision. While our designers on the team were really championing native development for the UX benefits, our developers suggested a multi-platform framework so that we could develop efficiently for both platforms and have more users able to use the first version of the app. So we decided, in the interest of getting to more users sooner, we would go with this multi-platform framework called Cordova. And our devs understood and felt confident that they could deliver on the experience by working with design closely. So our goal was to get a beta out to users in 3 months. About 2 months in to development, my slides moved. Anyway, these red boxes are supposed to be like down and to the right just a little bit. Anyway, 2 months into our 3-month project, Stack Overflow released these survey results. Cordova was ranked as the most dreaded framework in existence in use by developers at the time. This bore out in our team's experience. Designers were also really unhappy with the quality of the experience. So what we had built and we were about to deliver to our users wasn't the quality of user experience that we were used to developing. And our developers were actually miserable working with the tech. So it didn't work that great for them either. They were constantly having to fiddle with it and they were sort of banging their heads against the wall. So everyone started advocating for a rewrite to go back to native development because nobody was happy with how things were going. Unfortunately, we had said that we wanted to get an MVP into production like a month from then. We probably couldn't rewrite the whole app in a month. Now I could have gone to the team and said, no, we're gonna like keep charging ahead because we made this commitment. I could have gone to our stakeholders and said, we've hit a major roadblock, we're gonna have to push out the timeline. Both of these are options. But as the product manager, I didn't want to make that decision by myself because it impacted the whole team. So instead of making the decision by PM dictate, we discussed the pros and cons as a team. We got together in a room, we whiteboarded some options, we talked about the benefits and drawbacks of one option versus the other, and eventually the team decided that we should make it to the beta before making any changes. And that was really because when it came down to it, we only had a few features left to develop in Cordova to get us to an MVP that we could put in front of users. And if we put that in front of our users and they said, this isn't useful, I would never use this no matter how good the quality was, then we would know that the project wasn't worth continuing regardless, and we could avoid the rewrite altogether. If they found it really valuable, that would be validation that further investment would be a good idea, and we could approach a rewrite in native at that point. So because in this situation we worked together to make the decision, we all understood it really deeply. It wasn't just Becki's call as the product manager and everybody else had to fall in line. We were bought in to getting to the results we wanted to get to as a team. And while we understood our situation was not ideal, we were unified in our goal. So collaboration in this instance facilitated better decisions faster and with ownership. So while our developers still weren't happy with the framework and the designers still wanted to make improvements to the user experience, and I cared about both of those things as well, we all knew that there was a goal that we were trying to get to, and we wanted to get there together. So last but not least is a story where we were building an app for hardware that didn't exist yet. And we needed to be ready to launch on the same day as the hardware. So product managers and product designers work together to turn user needs into value realized. So in other words, creating software solutions for problems that real people have. PMs and designers often collaborate on research plans, feature brainstorming, user research, etc. So while I was working as a product designer at a large health insurance company, I worked very closely with a product manager on an Apple Watch app called Q. So Q is a free-to-anyone wellness app that would demonstrate the company's commitment to helping people live healthy lives. We had just 5 weeks to design and build this app. And by working together to determine what features would be most useful to our users, we were able to deliver something that was simple and elegant and deliver it on the day that the Apple Watch launched. So in the end, Q was a hugely successful product for our team, and I really attribute that success to the balanced team approach. In this instance, as a designer, I worked directly alongside the product manager on a variety of aspects. We did all of the user research together. We tested paper prototypes together. We prioritized which features would be most valuable together. We actually sat side by side. So as I was iterating on design concepts, the product manager could just lean over and talk to me about them. And we fell into this really easy cadence of checking in with each other informally to talk about options or new features. So by collaborating on translating these ideas and feedback from our research into the designs as we went, we eliminated a ton of back and forth, document creation and review cycles, which would have wasted time that we simply didn't have. So 5 weeks is not the amount of time that most designers would ask for to design an entire app. But in this instance, we were able to meet our goal. In this instance, in order to meet our goal, 5 weeks was what we had because we wanted to be in the App Store on launch day. So collaborating fluidly across these disciplines was really key to making the tight timeline work. So this is all about de-risking, right? By having the PM participate in user research, we tighten the feedback loop between business ideas and user needs. Close collaboration between engineering and design allowed us to get functioning features created in days, not weeks. So as soon as I had something mocked up, I could just tap an engineer on the shoulder and say, hey, look at this. And they would be like, hey, that looks great. Let me make some tweaks in the code. And then we went to the Watch Lab in California to test the product before it launched. Ours was essentially ready to go, while many other teams were still struggling to get an app up and running. So as a protection against the rate of change and as a tool for embracing it, we must work together. I know that sounds simple, but consider for a moment. In these 3 stories, a potential pain point, something that could have caused a whole product to fail, became an opportunity because of collaboration. So true collaboration between respected equals who are generally curious about the other's perspective. Often we think that by handing off a deliverable to the next person or by sending an email, we are working together. Designers hand off designs to developers and don't talk about them. Developers will change those designs because the delivered design wasn't actually possible to implement. Product managers will deprioritize features because they don't understand the user need. And major projects get scrapped because teams get blindsided by changes to technology. Teams are also constantly putting out fires because they're not talking to each other. And oftentimes the reaction to these difficult situations is we close ranks, we institute more process. So we formalize handoffs, we create highly detailed project plans. All of that just does more to delay delivery, and it requires constant revision, and ultimately the plans will still miss the mark in some way. So working together across disciplines enables a team to respond to change faster. It helps a team learn and grow as professionals so that they're able to respond to the broader marketplace with a diverse and effective set of skills. And it helps us reduce risk across the product's lifecycle by shortening feedback loops at all levels with our internal collaborators, with our stakeholders, and with our users and customers. So there are a lot of processes and methodologies that talk about how teams should work. And what most of these processes and methods talk about is how work flows through a system, like step A, B, C. What these frameworks don't often do is talk about how people should work together. The Agile Manifesto, which is over 20 years old at this point, explicitly states individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So balanced teams are how we can embrace agility by prioritizing individuals and interactions every time. So this is not a process framework. It is a conceptual framework for how to organize people for better results. So the key principles of a balanced team are that no one team member is in charge of the others. Each role on the team has a particular responsibility to the team, and each team member is 100% dedicated to the product. So let me go into a little more detail here. The most common way a balanced team is implemented for software teams is with 3 key roles on each product team. Those 3 key roles are product management, product design, and software engineering. If you take any 2 of these roles, you've got a great cross-functional pair, can do awesome things. When you have all 3 working on a balance, you've got a powerhouse of discovery and delivery. Each role has its part to play, but all of them are also equal contributors to the success of the product. And here we just have a highlight of the responsibilities of each of the roles on the team. It's worth highlighting, I can't say this enough, that people on a balanced team, for this to work, must be 100% dedicated to one product. It's not a balanced team if your designer is the designer for 3, 4, 7 product teams. In order to develop deep domain knowledge, people need to be working in this space on one product with these people all of the time. It enables them to make better decisions faster. It also avoids prioritization problems. So if you are an engineer who's 50% allocated to one product and 50% allocated to another product, every morning when you show up to work, you look at your calendar, you look at your tasks and your backlog, and you say, who am I going to disappoint today by not doing their stuff first? So 100% dedication is really key. The stories I shared earlier illustrate some special ways that collaboration across disciplines can help teams move through difficult situations. So there's a host of other opportunities for cross-disciplinary collaboration as well. And then the cherry on top of all of this is we all get a much deeper and nuanced understanding of trade-offs. So here I've outlined some of the ways that roles work together. So for example, product management and design can work across their disciplines on user research, prioritization, and even branding and marketing for a product. Engineering and product management work together to balance tech debt against features and to enable agility. So I can't be an effective product manager that enables true agility for our product if I don't work with my engineering counterparts to write and groom the kind of stories in our backlog that enable us to continuously integrate, continuously deliver, and pivot when we need to. Every member of a balanced team is better equipped to make decisions because they have more context from working together. So much of the work we do is about trade-offs, right? Time, quality, scope, cost, customer needs versus business needs. It goes on and on. If we do one thing, there's 5 other things that we can't do. So we need teams that are great at understanding these trade-offs and can work together to move forward. And so these are just a few examples from my personal experience that demonstrate the effectiveness of balanced teams. And I'm sure anyone who's worked on a team like this has their stories as well. And I encourage you to seek them out from others. Balanced teams ensure viability, desirability, and feasibility of our products, but they also reduce risk, improve speed, and spread knowledge and expertise. So regardless of our roles, we can all work together with others to make something greater than the sum of our parts. That's what makes balanced teams magic. People on balanced teams don't just pass around deliverables and point fingers at one another. They dig in and work together to solve problems creatively. Thank you. Who's got questions?
Yeah, that was awesome, Becki. I appreciate that. Yeah, so those 3 key takeaways about creating shared ownership and understanding, facilitating better decisions faster with ownership, and de-risking product development was really like pithy and insightful but helpful. I did notice that like the first 2 takeaways, right? They both have ownership in the title. Was there anything specifically about the ownership that you wouldn't mind kind of like emphasizing or highlighting a bit more there? Or why is that so valuable?
Yeah, that's a great call out. Collective ownership is like a key principle of how balanced teams work. It's a key benefit, really. And ownership is about like everybody on the team feeling like the product is theirs, which A, makes it a better product, and B, means that the team and the product are also more durable. And by that, I mean like people can go on vacation and other people, like there's slack to pick up, but it's not like, oh, I have to do a knowledge transfer before I take a week-long vacation, right? Other people just pick up where that person left off. Like even for product managers and designers who often find themselves like the only person in their role on a balanced team, when you've got a really well-running balanced team, those people can go on vacation and the other people on the team will pick it up. So as a PM, I've had a designer fill in my shoes while I was out. I've done the same thing in reverse for a designer when they were out, or like the engineers will just understand where the design is going, so that if the designer's not around, they're like, oh, I'm not stuck. I can continue moving forward. Not forever, but for a significant period of time, right? So the team's more durable. The product's more durable because everybody cares about the quality and everybody cares about the problem we're trying to solve. When you don't have balanced teams and people don't have ownership over the product, you get a lot of like, that's not my job, which doesn't make for a great product, right? Because the designer only cares about like the user experience, the PM only cares about the business goals, and the engineers only care about like really great tech. And like those things on their own don't make great products.
Yeah, that's good. So, you mentioned before, even just a moment ago, like the ways that like each person can kind of take over for another person, like cover for them while they're out or gone or something like that. What would you say to the PM who saw the page with the trade-offs, right? Like the different kinds of cross-discipline pairing, which is super helpful to see those different kinds of ways they can do that. What would you say to the PM who sees that and goes, prioritization, like that's my job. I'm not supposed to like share prioritization with someone else. In a as polite of a response as possible, what would you say to that PM?
I I don't know how you can prioritize well without the input of people who have perspectives different from your own. It is incredibly risky to be the only person making the decision about what we will build next. As a matter of fact, if I felt like healthy product management was being like the person in charge of deciding what happens when with no input from anyone, I wouldn't do the job because that's not the kind of responsibility that I want. I don't want to be the sole person to decide on the failure or success of our product. I want to do that with other smart people who have different perspectives from me. So while like ultimately a lot of times the product manager is my back.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're back.
It just decided to my mic decided to mute itself for some reason.
Yeah, the computer wasn't a huge fan of that last point. Um,
What was I saying?
you're talking about having like the power of like deciding the fate of a product, whether it's successful or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to do that with other smart humans. Um, if it's just me, then like I am not an engineer. I don't know what's easy or difficult. Um, there have been so many times that I've been talking with a team about a feature we might build, or even like the way in which we might build it. And design will be like, well, actually, that's like not a great pattern. Some like new best practices have emerged that like improve the usability. And an engineer will come along and say, well, actually, we could do like this. There's this really cool library I know about that makes making that way better, like even easier than the thing that you're proposing. I'm like, well, yes, let's do the cooler thing that's easier. I don't know all that stuff. Like, so I don't want to be the only person because I'm going to have better prioritization decisions when I take other people's input.
Yeah, that's good. It sounds like humble pie should be a regular part of a product person's diet.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is like a lot of times as a product manager, you become like the tiebreaker or the final decider, or like when it comes down to it, if there's no obvious path forward, it is the product manager's job to navigate that ambiguity and lead the team through that. But that doesn't mean that you just like take a machete and start hacking through the forest. It means you gather all of the data from the smart people and then use your product manager skills to like help a path forward emerge. And more often than not, that's like a team activity you facilitate rather than a thing you just like go off and do by yourself.
Yeah, that's helpful. Speaking of that same page with the different like cross-discipline pairing, the part in the middle with design engineering pairing, most of the time when I hear of that, it's often like, hey, there's some tweaks we need to make to this design, to this code that you guys implemented. Let's just go ahead and pair on that. But that's not entirely what you had. There were a couple of other parts about design pairing that was in there. Would you mind kind of describing some more of the nuances to design and engineering pairing, and specifically the information architecture? I thought was particularly interesting.
Yeah. I'll talk about like a couple of scenarios that pop up over and over in product development that are like great opportunities for designers and engineers to pair. So one is new UI patterns that no one on the team has implemented before, or like novel user experiences. So like I remember years ago we were working on something that had this like crazy complex interactive graph. And that was something that like, yes, designers went and did a bunch of exploration and iteration on their own, but when it came time to implement, like a designer and a developer sitting down and pairing while a developer worked on it helped them really refine that without like, and do it quickly and efficiently, right? Rather than like designer comes up with a really complex mock-up, which can be a big investment, gives that to a developer tries to figure out how that works on their own. It's much easier to like have somebody explain it to you, the person who designed it explain it to you. And then inevitably there's things that's like, oh man, that's like way fiddlier than I expected it to be. So that's a really good place. On API design in particular, designers and developers working really closely together. So like, believe it or not, there should be designers on products that don't have a front end, because design principles still apply, and like having another perspective involved in that is really valuable, because the developers working on it are going to be thinking about the internal architecture of the thing that they're building, and may not be thinking so much about the needs of the person who's going to consume that API. So having a designer who's like done the research come and sit in and bring that perspective is really helpful for like, how are we going to structure this API? How many endpoints are we going to have, and what data is going to be at what endpoint? That's a really good opportunity to pair as well. And then like in certain cases, I've seen the needs of the user interface and the needs of the database influence one another, right? So if you've got like an application that's like displaying a whole bunch of data to a user, like really complex data, the ways in which that needs to be presented in the UI are going to influence the structure of that database, and the limitations of our database technology will influence what we can show in the UI. So that's another opportunity for designers and engineers to get together in like a more abstract way and talk about like, okay, what are the elements we want to show, and like in what context do we want to show them? So how can we expect to pull those over?
Yeah, I especially appreciate that API example. I was on a team for a little bit that was working on building out an API, and I feel like you don't realize how crucial a solid design discipline is to the building of an API until you have to integrate with a really bad API, and then you're like, oh man, this is the worst. So
yeah, think about those APIs that have like horribly named things, and like there's just like one endpoint that just dumps a bunch of data on you. You're like, what am I going to do with all of this? So yeah, like that's information architecture, and designers are trained in that. And it's not that the other, like a point that I don't make in that slide deck, but I think is really important to highlight, is that balanced team is valuable not just because we need people with these certain skill sets, although that is a big part of it. Another part of it is we need people on the team who are taking these perspectives. So even if you had one person who knew how to code, knew how to design, and was also an effective product manager, one person doing everything, you're going to get one person's opinion. That person might as well just like be off in a cave by themselves. When you have a person whose job it is to like champion the business perspective and like think about our goals, a person who is championing the user's perspective or the customer's perspective, and people who are championing technical quality, then you get like, that's why it's called balanced team, because then you get balance in your decisions. So you manage to get like, there's a natural push and pull, and there will be arguments. And a colleague of mine, Amanda, in Boston, has actually said that you choose the roles for your balanced team based on where you want to create healthy arguments. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I thought it was like a really insightful point of like, where do I want people to push on each other to make better decisions? Like, let me get people with those perspectives on the team. So like there may be a fourth role that you want full-time on the team because that's a perspective you need. Data science is a great example. If you're working on a product that like heavily incorporates data science, you probably want that person on your team bringing that perspective. For some of my clients, security is a major concern. So like if you're building out something brand new and having to like pave a new path for security, you might want a security person around a lot of the time to like have that perspective. So
yeah, that's a really, really solid point. I appreciate that last one too from Amanda. Hoping to get her in to speak next. You heard it here, Amanda. Cool. Well, in sort of in closing, we have only one question left. It might be the worst one for you, so I just want to tee you up for it. All right. Is there such a thing as too much collaboration?
No.
Yes.
No such thing as too much collaboration. There's such a thing as too much talking.
Mm.
And like when you have analysis paralysis and
Yep.
like you've got 6 people in a room who all have a differing opinion and you're trying to build consensus. Like consensus in product development is kind of like an anti-goal in my opinion. Like having a balanced team doesn't mean we're all going to agree about every choice that we make. It means we're all going to share our perspectives so that we can like make the best informed decision that we can. So I don't think there's such a thing as too much collaboration, but I think you can get into analysis paralysis. And it's one of the product manager's responsibilities is to like make sure that we are like taking action, even if we don't know, like we never have enough information. We never know for certain that a thing is going to work until it is out there in the world. So we always need to be like pushing to get that thing out there in the world.
Yeah, almost as if collaboration is like the sweet spot, right? Then the too much talking is when collaboration stops being collaboration, it becomes something worse.
Yeah, it becomes like grandstanding or
yeah.
I learned a great word the other day, bloviate.
I'm writing that one down, bloviate.
Which apparently originates from Ohio politicians.
Okay.
And it basically means to speak at length and fill all of the available time while saying nothing.
Solid. I think that's how I got through high school. So that's good to keep in mind. Yeah, no knock against our ProductTank Cincinnati partners, but that's really awesome. Cool. Well, Becki, I think that's all the questions we have. I haven't seen new ones come in or anything like that. So, yeah, really appreciate your time. Would you mind one more time kind of sharing again how people can find some of the resources from you or get in contact with you if they want to have the same talk and come into their own organization to help change some minds or just want to kind of catch up and chat for a virtual coffee or something?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Becki Hyde, I'm pretty easy to find. There's not a lot of hides running around out there. So yeah, hit me up on there and you should be able to send me a message. If that doesn't work, you can just email me at beckyhyde@gmail.com.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for that. And everyone else, thank you for tuning in. Again, if you have any input or feedback, please feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. There are actually several Alex Jacobs on there, but you can find my face. It's a pretty common one, and reach out. I'd love to talk with anyone who wants to help volunteer or suggest ideas and things like that too, and even just pass on any feedback and encouragement you have for Becki. So yeah, looking forward to doing the next one. Keep an eye on our Mind the Product page, and we'll see you all again soon. So bye now. Take care.